If I had to give you an over-under of August 1st for Jac Caglianone pick league debut, what do you say right now?
I got to stick with my gut and say he's coming up before August 1st for sure.
One Royal Way back at it here on Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Joel Penfield. Thank you all so much for tuning in here. Be sure you are subscribed on the audio and video platforms and hit those notification bells so you know when our episodes go up. Starting next week, we're going to get 3 episodes a week out to you guys for the rest of the season. I'm really looking forward to that, so be sure you are locked in as we are one step closer to opening day. If you guys are listening to this on Thursday, 1 week away from opening day at Kauffman Stadium against the Cleveland Guardians. Today, we're not going to talk about the big league team. This is going to be a minor league heavy episode. I've been wanting to do this. I just couldn't find the time, but as we're leading into the major league season, I want to make sure that I give these guys some shine. Joining me to do that is Jared Perkins, friend of the show. He hosts the On the Clock podcast talking about high school and college at MLB Draft for Just Baseball Media. Our good friend Peter Apple, another friend of the show, a big part of that. Hopefully we can get him on here soon as well. So I'm excited to get into this. We got a lot of guys to cover and the future of the Royals. How you doing, man?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me on. Excited to talk some Royals prospects. It's crazy that opening day is like a week away, but ready for it.
I can't wait. I'm excited. We got a lot to talk about. Before we do that, the show is always brought to you by Emprise Bank, our partners in Possible. Member FDIC. We can't thank them enough for their support of everything they do for us here at KCSN and on this podcast on Royal Way. Before we get into the meat of the show, and we're going to talk prospect rankings, guys we're higher on, lower on, and try and give you some analysis on a lot of these guys to look forward to going into the year. There were some guys re-signed to minor league camp. Evan Sisk was optioned. I imagine we'll see him in Kansas City at some point. Jonathan Boland, Steven Cruz, both optioned to Omaha. Austin Cox, Thomas Hatch, Carter Jensen, and Luca Tresh all reassigned to minor league camp. And then Jac Caglianone, Cam Devaney, Gavin Cross, and John Rave also reassigned to minor league camp. We see if I don't think there's anything specifically about any injury updates or anything like that. Alec Marsh is getting one step closer, but he's still a little ways away, pitching a minor league game today, but I haven't heard anything about how that went. Have not, and looks like Kyle Wright is still on the mend as well, but is working his way back from that hamstring strain. Other than that, not a lot of other news and notes. So we're good to go ahead and just lock into this thing, Jared. When I was looking at the various prospect rankings on all these different sites, Pipeline, Prospects Live, Just Baseball, Baseball America Prospectus, all of them, there's pretty much a consensus top 3, which I think is very rare to see. Like normally you'll see a consensus 1, consensus 1, 2. To go top 3, Jac Caglianone, Blake Mitchell, Carter Jensen, 1 through 3. Seems like they have those guys pretty well locked in. Do you agree that that's the clear top 3, or do you have any other movement?
Yeah, I mean, in my personal top 3, it was the exact same. Actually, I think I had Ramon Ramirez as number 3 over Carter Jensen. But like right now, if I was to update it, I'd probably put Carter in the top 3. It's just the high upside of Jac Cags. That's why he's number 1 for what he did in the college level. And then you have, of course, Blake Mitchell, another first rounder, performed last year. Of course, he's going to be number 2. Then Carter Jensen, it's really hard to ignore what that kid did to turn things around, and that's why he's at number 3. And I think everybody sees that across the board.
Yeah, I Jac Caglianone, he made himself well known.
Yeah,
in spring training with what he did in big league camp for so long. I mean, I talked about it on the show almost ad nauseum at this point, but it's too much to ignore. I think the talent is too much to ignore with what that guy can do and what he can provide sooner rather than later in Kansas City. A lot of times when the Royals have drafted guys, it's been like, okay, we got to wait like 3 years to see if there's going to be anything with this. I think Blake Mitchell's an example of that. Not that that's always a bad thing, but when you're able to get a high performer like a Jac Caglianone that you can insert in your roster sooner rather than later, and it seems like that's the way the team might handle this. Like he's going to go to Double-A. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, if he goes and kills it, which I think he might, I wouldn't be shocked if he's in Kansas City in Omaha by June. And then we're having a conversation around the trade deadline of, okay, can Jac Caglianone be the trade deadline piece that the Royals need, an injection of power in the middle of the order for a playoff run? Like he has moved that fast, I think, and I think he can move that fast. The contact rate is ridiculous for a guy his size with his power.
Yeah.
There's some really the only thing I need to see is just some swing decision stuff. And that's one of the easiest things that you can fix. There's nothing really mechanical that I'm worried about. I'm not worried about a hit tool. I'm not worried about the swing and miss as much because he makes so much contact that it almost balances out. I just want to see, can he play a passable outfield, which it seems like they're going to let him do? And can he not chase so much that it takes away from his ability to put the ball in play? He does those two things. I'm going to start getting irrational about what he can do very, very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I said it after the draft that I thought that he's going to make a Wyatt Langford ascend to the big leagues because the plate coverage that he has is just absolutely insane. And like everybody kind of goes to his chase rate as being the concern, and I get it, but like you mentioned, he makes contact on those pitches. It's not like he's swinging
north of 90%.
Yeah,
for a guy that's 6'5", 250, you don't see that. Like you see like it's like a more Joey Gallo type archetype when you think about a dude with 70, possibly 80 power. It's like, okay, he may have a decent approach, but the contact and the hit tool is like 30.
Yeah.
But you're talking about a guy with a 50 hit tool out the gate right now, 70 game, probably 80 raw power. It's just a matter of getting that approach to be a 40 or a 45 instead of a 20 or 30. It's so slight. It doesn't have to be crazy.
Yeah.
Just enough to be passable, and he's going to be a really impact big leaguer very fast.
Yeah, and like you want him to see him make the tweaks, right? Because he's not facing college arms anymore, right? He's going to be facing some of the best in the league. But when you're in college and you're putting up a max EV of 121.7, and your average is 100, or your 90th percentile EV was 111.7, like absolutely insane numbers. And you're, like you said, putting in those contact skills that he has along with it. It's like he was putting balls that were like 2 pitches off the plate over the left field wall.
It's nuts.
It's nuts.
When you go to I want to stay in the top 3 for a little bit here. So Blake Mitchell, I was highly skeptical when they picked him. I was highly skeptical going into last season. And when you consider high school catcher going straight to affiliated ball after for a first full season, didn't spend any time in instructs before going, he exceeded pretty much any expectation that I could have had. The power is legitimate. The defense is good. The arm was a little weird. Looks like it was kind of like he got the yips a little bit, but the way people were running in low A was almost, it's wild.
Field numbers are crazy.
It's crazy. You gave up like 100 something stolen bases, but like the fact that people weren't even running that much is nuts. That's a whole different conversation. He's going to walk. He's patient. The strikeouts are it's just part and parcel with who he is. He's always going to strike out. But can he be a guy that hits 235, plays above average defense, walks at a 9 to 10% clip, and pops you 20, 25 homers a year? Like, can he be Cal Raleigh? I think that's it may be a 80 or 90th percentile outcome, but I think in that mold is an everyday catcher at the big league level. And for a guy that's trying to show that type of profile, if he's able to come back from the hamate injury and not miss a beat when he goes to Quad Cities, then you are looking at your catcher of the future in Kansas City, or one of, because there's some other guys that are going to make attention for that.
Yeah, and my question too is like not to knock his defense behind the plate, because like you mentioned, arm, 70 grade arm behind the dish, but just struggle with some of the accuracy of the throws. But he's so athletic that could you throw him in a corner outfield spot? You could probably throw him in right field with a cannon of an arm.
I've had the same conversation about Carter Jensen, and I kind of think that Jensen may be a better profile for that than Blake, because I think Blake's profile fits way better behind the plate.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Carter Jensen can handle his offensive profile in a corner way better.
Make him a Jock Peterson.
Yeah, like Jock Peterson, Kyle Schwarber, something along that line. And I think he's way more athletic than both of those guys. But I think Blake Mitchell in a corner is MJ Melendez. And is that good enough to be an everyday big leaguer? I think it's way safer at behind the plate for Blake Mitchell.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think when you talked about kind of the hit tool concerns with Mitchell too, it's like it's a swing decision thing, right? Like he's got to just make better choices on what he's swinging at. Like he walks a ton and he's got good plate discipline, so he has a good feel for the strike zone. It's just like trying to do too much and like trying to do something with a pitch he probably can't do anything with. So it's like in zone contact rate, I believe, was pretty high. So like that gives you some hope. Like he's guys just got to temper down the strikeouts and just stop chasing things out of the zone. And that's what's crazy too, is like he offsets that with such good plate discipline and walks at a high rate that you know that the ability is there. He's still young. He's still 20 years old. So like the upside is just immense with him. If he can just get that hit tool to like a 50 grade, like you're just looking at a really, really high offensive player.
I mean, even if it's 40, like I think with the way the defense plays, and by the time he gets to the big leagues, maybe there's ABS in place, and then the defense is just like, just block the ball and keep things safe. And I think he's athletic enough to do that.
Yeah.
Carter Jensen, I didn't even realize this as I'm looking at his Fangraphs page. Like I know he's been pretty consistent throughout his time in the minors. Like strikeout rate's manageable. He has a really good eye. Dudes are terrified to pitch to him, and he'll drop a bomb on you if you give him something that he can hammer pull side.
Yeah.
But A-ball, first go around an A-ball at 18 years old, 113 weighted runs created plus. He goes up a level in 23, 109. And he wasn't even that great for Quad Cities. But again, to be an above average guy with an OPS below 700, good start. Goes back and kills at 137 last year, goes up to Northwest Arkansas and has his struggles, still 780 OPS and a 112 weighted runs created plus in 41 games. The offensive profile to me is pretty damn safe.
Yeah.
You consider the ability to walk, the ability to keep your strikeout rate like manageable, which manageable for me is like 20 to 23%. Like that's fine, especially when you have the type of power that Carter Jensen possesses with the ability to walk. I would not be shocked if he's knocking on the door of AAA by the end of the season. And then by this time next year, it is, okay, when is Carter Jensen going to make the big leagues? And at that point, he's going to be this will be his age 21 season. So he'll be 22 years old and knocking on the door of the big leagues. A guy that really could have a massive impact and maybe he is the catcher of the future. And it's not. And, while we wait for Blake Mitchell to make his ascent and we see him, Carter Jensen, battling Freddie Fermin for time next season. I really like what I keep seeing. I know some of the results in spring were not awesome, but the home run he hit off James Karinchak was, to me, like this guy is going to keep getting better. Maybe just wasn't ready for the full big league camp experience at this point, but there's still some stuff that is really, he still walks 17% of the time, which again, like small sample, yada, yada. Still like to see it.
Yeah. I mean, I what I always kind of say about Carter Jensen is like he gives me hope for Blake Mitchell, right? Like just to see the turnaround that this prep catcher can make makes me think that Blake Mitchell can kind of do some of the similar things.
I agree.
For me, it's just the power just took a significant stride this year. He had an average exit velo of 92 miles an hour. The only concern I have with him is he struggles with lefties, and so that's kind of why I mentioned the Jock Peterson thing, where he could be a platoon bat that just mashes righties all day. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
You can have a hell of a career doing that.
Yeah, for sure. Like Jock Peterson's getting paid this year by the Texas Rangers, and he's been getting paid his whole career basically by somebody. So he's just a solid athlete too behind the dish, and I think he's got a decent arm. He's not, of course, a Blake Mitchell's in terms of strength, but it's still it's close to plus arm behind the dish. And I think the big thing that I noticed about him last year is he made a ton of improvements in his ability to pitch frame and receive the ball, which that's just like huge strides for him behind the dish. And he did a good job blocking behind the plate too, which I think was a big question mark going in for him in 2024. So like if he's making those strides, I just have a lot of faith in him and his ability to stick behind the dish. And it's like, hey, if Mitchell figures those things out too behind there, and you got two guys who are potentially really good catchers, one, it gives you maybe a potential trade chip if you need something in the future, but also it's hard to find big league catchers. And if you got two of them in your system, that's really nice.
The fact that you even alluded to the possible Carter Jensen trade, Josh Kaiser is somewhere like punching through his phone trying to get to either of us.
Yeah.
I know he's going to hear that. And I know we're going to get a chuckle out of him for that. We got a lot more guys to talk about here, and we're going to do that right after this.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your number one source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story. Like Bryan Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Bryan Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank. Member FDIC. Equal housing lender.
As I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, make sure you are liking the video. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure you're subscribed on audio and video platforms. Hit those notification bells. 3 episodes a week coming at you starting next week as we lead into opening day. One guy that moved around a lot that I know is one more hitter, and we'll hit some pitchers. Gavin Cross is kind of all over the place when you look at where he falls on rankings. We talked about the 3 at the top being consensus. Like Cross looks like he's 6th on Pipeline. He's 7th on Prospects Live. He's 6th on Baseball America, and Just Baseball has him at 11. And I'm sure that, and I wish I had access to some more sites. I unfortunately don't have the expendable income to go through all these paywalls. Where are you at on Gavin Cross? I think he's going to be a big leaguer this season. It's a heavy platoon situation, unless he's able to make some sort of adjustment in AAA. But at this point, I think he's just going to be a lefty bat against right-handed pitching in a corner outfield spot. But he mashes right-handed pitching. He's really athletic. He can steal you some bases. He plays a good right field. I think that's going to be his profile, and it's pretty safe when you just want to talk about him as a platoon guy as opposed to an everyday guy. But I'll be curious how he's deployed if he does go to Kansas City, because it's basically having another MJ Melendez type guy. But if MJ struggles, you want a guy that is a little more consistent, making contact and, utilizing his pull side power. Maybe that's the injection that you try and give into the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy I struggled when I was doing my rankings. Like, I think I had him as high as 7 at one point and then as low as 12. I could not figure out kind of where to place him in the rankings. I ended up putting him at 10, and he did improve a ton, but he hit righties a lot better than he hit lefties, which he had
by a lot. It's like a 300 point gap in OPS.
Yeah.
I talked about that last week. I didn't even realize how drastic it was last year, because I was more focused on, he resurrected his career. Because he really struggled. He got it together, and then he got sick. It zapped everything, and people really wrote him off. He was much better in Double-A, but I somehow completely missed the fact, he had a 514 OPS against lefties. That's a problem.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just because he's got such an aggressive approach. Like, he did make some improvements to the strikeout rate, and that's because of his ability to kind of recognize spin, and he's got a decent feel for the zone. But he's just so ultra aggressive when he's at the dish, and he's trying to make things happen all the time. And it's just like, man, you just got to take a step back and see some pitches and figure out how to find a pitch in the zone and drive it. And I think that's kind of going to always be his issues. Power's always kind of been his calling card. He's struggled to tap into it in games because he's just struggled to handle velocity up in the zone. And that's just another issue for him on top of that. But like you said, the power's there. He's made enough improvements and strides where you think he could be kind of maybe a 4A type outfielder or maybe a bench bat. Because he's good running on the bases too. And he stole 30 bases last year, and he can play the outfield pretty decently. I know for his size, everybody kind of gives him some slack, but he's a pretty decent runner. And
he's not a center fielder. He's a corner outfielder.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me rephrase that. If he played in the AL East, he could be a center fielder.
Yeah.
He is not a center fielder in the AL Central.
No, he would not be better than Isbell or Blanco for that matter.
Moving on to the pitching side here, Ben Kudrno, pretty much across the board, is the top pitcher prospect. And then after him, any one of Noah Cameron, Blake Walters, David Shields, Drew Beam in some order are behind him. Where are you at on Kudrno compared to the guys that are sort of behind him? Who I think Kudrno's floor is a lot higher than a lot of guys. but I think there's a lot more ceiling with some of the guys behind him. But I think taking a safe guy that you think is going to slot in 3, 4, 5 somewhere in your rotation is a decent bet at this point. And Coonan has done his trajectory's almost been the same at every level. Like, you went to low A and it was like, you saw some flashes, but a lot of struggles. And then he goes back to Columbia, crushes it. He's way too good for the level. Goes to Quad Cities, same sort of thing. Flashes, but a lot of struggles. Goes back to Quad Cities, crushes it. Then goes to Northwest Arkansas, flashes but struggles. I'd imagine that's going to just continue for him until he kind of gets his feet underneath him. I wouldn't be shocked if that track record stays. He goes to Northwest Arkansas, is really good, and then goes to Omaha, but then builds it up, and then we're talking about him maybe mid-2026.
Yeah, I put him at number 5, which is above the rest of the Royals pitchers, I believe, because I think Carter Jensen was 4 for me. Noah Cameron's probably got the safest floor out of all the guys. Yeah. But Kudrina's got, it's 3 average to above average pitches. Like, he's got the stuff. Like, the fastball's taken a dip. Like, he's 92 to 94, tops at 95, and he used to be 98 coming out of high school. So,
yeah.
You want to, like, my hope has been like, oh, maybe he'll get that velo back. Because, like, his slider and changeup play so well if he's like upper 90s. But as long as he's in the mid to low 90s, it's harder to get his other 2 pitches to play, which leads him to not generating as much swing as miss as he would like to see. And I think that's where kind of his struggles come into play. Like, his control kind of takes a dip and takes a step back as soon as he's not able to put guys away. And that's the one thing that he just seems to always lack, that ability to generate swing and miss, and has a put away pitch. Even though he's got an above average changeup, which is probably his best secondary, it's just like he just struggles to get guys put away.
Yeah, I had high hopes for him a couple of years ago, and I still think he's a big leaguer. Like, it's not,
I agree.
but I think it's gone from maybe he's a 3 to maybe he's a 4, 5, or you put him in the bullpen with those 2+ off-speed offerings. Maybe the fastball ticks up and it can be 94 to 96, top 97, and he's able to be. I think that'd be a good reliever, but it's a matter of him being able to find that velo again. I agree with you on Noah Cameron. Yeah. He's going to pitch in the big leagues this season. I think he's going to be solid in whatever role they need him to be, but I think they want him to start. I was
especially if that velo uptick sticks.
But that is really interesting. We'll talk about another guy with a velo uptick here in a second, another lefty. Blake Walters, I was super high on going into last season, and I know that the prep righty profile is risky as hell, but damn it, the kid was throwing 100 with a wipeout slider. I was like, my God, this guy might go in and be a problem, and he really struggled in low A. And it shows again, like, prep righty profile super risky, and there's no such thing as a pitching prospect. It's a problem. Yeah. And so I'm lower this year, but again, like, I kind of just want to bet on stuff, and I think the Royals have done a really good job of that in the last couple of drafts, is just drafting better stuff and letting that play, specifically like fastball shape, playing a lot better. David Shields is fascinating. Because it's a prep lefty, and I hammered when they took the Royals when they took a prep lefty a couple years ago. This feels better though, because he comes in with a above average fastball already, a bigger frame, and a little more pitchability. Yeah, like he may go to low A and crush it right away. And Drew Beam is about as safe as they come, I think. Four pitches that are average or above, and college guy for multiple years. He'll probably be in Double A by the end of the year, and we're like, okay, that guy's going to be in the rotation or fighting for it by 26.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I love about David Shields is, like, it's 60 grade command at his age already. He was 17 on draft day. He's a Brian Bridges. Like, that's what Brian Bridges wants, is like that type of prep arm with that much upside. And that's the kind of guys he always got when he was at Atlanta. And so that gives me hope on David Shields more than most prep arms that are getting taken, and the fact that Bridges is probably like, this is my guy, and the fact that he has that pitchability already. He's been up to 92 at 17 years old. Like, he's topped at 94. It's like 88 to 92. And he's got an above average slider already, a changeup that's kind of building. Like, that's a kid to dream on right there. And hey, like you said, maybe he just takes off in the complex league.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him. I think they'll build him up the same way they built up Mazzucato, Kudun, and Panzini, where they're going to go to the complex, and then by like mid-May, then he goes, because they sent Walters right to low A.
Yeah, that didn't work out.
It did not work out. So maybe they learned their lesson and they let Shields just go and build a little bit, get some confidence in his stuff, and then go.
Yeah.
So Frank Mazzucato, I made it known last year. I said he's not a prospect. Like I was very much just done with it.
I listed him out of my top 15.
Yeah, like if you like, he's kind of all over the place on all of these prospect rankings too. Like I've seen him anywhere from, I think Pipeline had him 12. Prospects Live had him not even in their top 20. Baseball America had him down around 18. And then he was at 13 on just baseball, and they only do a top 15.
Yeah.
So he's, again, I think people are just soured on it because there hasn't been an uptick in velocity at all, despite a lot of the conversation around him was projectable frame with a, good fastball shape, the elite curveball. But the command hasn't come along. He walked the world. Like the 3.45 ERA means nothing to me from last season because he walked so many guys. I want to see the FIP just for posterity's sake because
it can't be great.
Yeah, it can't be. I just want to make sure I get the number correct here.
Yeah,
the FIP was 4.72.
Yeah,
with a 3.45 ERA. Like that ERA was always fake to me. And Jordan and Josh always told me like he threw 6 innings with 1 run ball. I'm like, yeah, but he walked 4. Like, come on, man. And I remember seeing tweets from Quad Cities that he was throwing 87. Like, man, this is just, it's not going to work.
Yeah. I mean, he was like 88 to 90 with the 87 to 90, I think, with the fastball. He struck out 21.3% of the batters. Then that was a big dip. And he walked 62 batters in 101 innings. So, that's why most people dropped him out of the rankings.
Yeah. And now you're going to talk about a guy that's going high A to double A, which is the biggest jump in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
Now here's the other side of the conversation. He goes to spring breakout. And I was like, okay, I was waiting. I'm willing to be wrong, always willing to be wrong. And I see 92 at the top of the zone. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Ops to 94. And he done and a really quick and just, I can't remember, I think it was Jack Hurley was the prospect from the Diamondbacks. Just blew his doors off. Fastball. I was like, oh, that's different. That's new. And he threw mainly fastball, flashed the curveball. It was probably the best I've ever seen him look at any level.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Pitch Profiler on Twitter, one of the great accounts out there now if you really are into like nerdy pitching stuff. Frank Mazzucato's fastball averaged 92.5, which for him, that's a massive uptick. Yeah. So there's a couple different ways to look at it. Not going to talk about the downside of it. But 2,400 RPM spin with 20 inches of induced vertical break and a little bit of cut. The stuff plus on it's 127. Like, we're having an entirely different conversation about Frank Mazzucato in June if we're still seeing 92 to 94 or not even 91 to 94 with those metrics with a 3,000 RPM curveball.
Yeah. I mean, I hope it sticks. Like, I feel like we had the same conversation last spring. But
we had almost everyone had this exact same conversation because there were reports coming out of the backfields. He was throwing 95. I'm like, okay, maybe. And then in May, it was 88. So we'll see if it sticks, if that was just a 2-inning burst. Which if it's a 2-inning burst, then okay, bullpen, and we're going to put on 15 pounds and throw 96.
But that's the thing. He feels like a bullpen arm to me because all he has is a fastball curveball. Changeup's not great. Like,
he didn't even feature it in the breakout.
Yeah. To me, that's like 2-pitch pitcher, throw him in the pen, try to Andrew Miller him maybe. I don't know.
Ooh, yeah. But I will say, like, it doesn't make me change my tune on him entirely. But that is like, okay, we have a base and we have evidence of what a velo tick can do for him. If he's able to do that, then I'm willing to go, okay, maybe there's something there.
Yeah.
Maybe there is a big leaguer in there that I didn't see this time last year. But certainly something to keep an eye on as he goes to Northwest Arkansas, because I think that's where he's going to end up. I don't think they're going to have him repeat because really it was just command. It wasn't like he got killed when he went to Quad Cities. It was just so.
It's like if he's 93 to 95 with a 60 grade curveball, like Is his OFP all of a sudden not a 45 and like a 50 instead? Like,
I think so. I mean, I think that's enough of a bump, especially if he's able to command like even if commands like 45 or 50.
yeah,
Like, I just want to see the velo stay. And I understand that velocity is not everything, and that gets talked about all the time from old heads and whatever. But it doesn't matter. Like, it creates margin for error. It is a lot harder to hit 94 than it is 88.
Yes.
Even if you're able to spit that ball and let it right at the top of the zone. Not everyone's Rich Hill and can make that work.
and your curveball becomes better if you do that.
Exactly. If he's able to command that fastball at the top of the zone with that ride and that metric, and that break, then that the curveball's ridiculous. Like, he spins, and the metrics on it are bad, but he spins it so well from that arm. I think it's just because it's from the arm slot he throws at, not necessarily the pitch itself. Because a 3,000 RPM curveball shouldn't have like a 70 stuff plus.
Yeah,
like it's way better than that.
That's a problem. And again, that's why his changeup was bad, though, because there was not enough separation and velocity from his changeup from his fastball. If he's now sitting like 93, I mean, now they've got separation from the changeup. Does that changeup become an average pitch?
Yeah, because the changeup's probably like 85? Yeah, 85 to 88. Like, there ain't much. Unless you're Zach Greinke throwing 88 mile an hour fastball and 89 mile an hour changeup. Like,
yeah,
there's not many dudes that can handle that.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
To broaden things out a little bit here, who's maybe someone you're higher on than the consensus or than some of these rankings, and then who's someone maybe you're lower on? I'll let you do both, and then I'll go.
Yeah, so I kind of struggle with the higher one, but I would say I'm probably a lot higher on Drew Beam than most. I was kind of going through the rankings, and everybody seems to have him on like the back end of the top 15 for the most part. I don't think Just Baseball even has him in the top 15. I had him all the way up at number 11. And this could be partially because of my draft bias and just being so inundated in the draft. But man, that is outside of Noah Cameron. I know he hasn't debuted in the minors yet, but that is a safe floor. Like, that was the one guy that we were all kind of saying in the draft, like, this is a dude that's going to be a big league pitcher. Yes, it's not the sexiest stuff in the world. Like, it's a fastball that's 92 to 96 that tops out at 98, but doesn't have like the best shape in the world. But he's got a curveball cutter, like a 60 grade changeup, and he's got 60 grade command. So like, he is just a dude that he's an absolute gamer. He goes out there, pitches like with fire. He's just a guy I think will make it to the major leagues and will find a way to make it to the major leagues and do whatever it takes to make it to the major leagues. So I just think he's a guy that like we could see be a fast riser. Maybe doesn't debut this year, but you could see potentially debut in 2026 if things go right.
Yeah, I think that, like, we talk about Noah Cameron being safe. I think Drew Beam is about as safe. Like, when you have that type of, not even if the stuff isn't great, the pitch mix is great, when you can command it and you have the conviction to throw it, like, it's gonna work. Like, I think that's a dude that's just, it's gonna work in some capacity. Who's someone you're lower on than most?
Yeah, I'm looking through the other rankings just to see. I know everybody's got like Yandel Ricardo in the top 15. I didn't even put him in my top 15. It's just too raw for me at this stage. But I was kind of in most of the consensus. Like, Javier Vaz, I think people have pretty high, but he also kind of fell like where BA, Prospects Live, and Pipeline, where that's kind of where I had Vaz as well. So I say like Yandel Ricardo maybe. I had him on my honorable mentions list. He's toolsy. He's super young. Like, didn't really do a ton in the Dominican Summer League this year. It's a nice compact swing, like solid bat to ball skills, but I have a hard time putting guys like in the top 15 that still just haven't really made a stateside debut. And we've seen like Humberto Arteaga and a bunch of these other guys who've gone through the system, Eric Pena, and like just haven't panned out. And so I just have a hard time. I need to see him stateside and see what he can do.
Yeah, I think we've been burned by so many of these highly rated prospects from the DR that I think we need to be way more cautious. And I understand like national people wanting to hype it up. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
But I hyped up Eric Pena. I was so excited for Eric Pena. But yeah, and I think he's gonna go to high A this year and strike out 42% of the time.
Yeah.
Like,
Hey, low A home runs leader because he's just been there so long. So
Yeah, no kidding. That's so fun. We see what 3 straight go rounds in low A.
yeah, he broke the Columbia record, home run record.
That's right. That's right. I'm higher on the most, and I understand it's a reliever profile. Relievers aren't sexy, and they're not going to jump up prospect rankings. But LP Langevin is going to be a big leaguer next year.
Yeah.
And I would throw him in the bullpen this year. When it's a legitimate 70 grade fastball that he throws from like this high 3/4 like weird arm slot. Like if you're a real baseball junkie and you follow like relievers, Paul Sewald, it's that same type of like compact high 3/4 ball just pops out and spins at the top and no one can pick it up. It's like people call it like an invisible. He throws that, but it's 97 at the top of the zone. He struck out 106 batters in 62 innings as a reliever last year for Louisiana Lafayette. I think the whiff rate on his fastball was 48%.
Yep, above 45% is
that is insane. Yeah. That is absolutely at any level. That is insane.
Yeah,
with a slider to go with it, that is league average. But when you have that type of fastball that you can play that metrically is just gorgeous, and you throw it 96 to 97, just get that guy to Quad Cities and let it ride. Because he is going to, like, I wouldn't even mess with putting him in low A. That's like just bullying. Like that is the baseball form of bullying, is putting that guy in low A to start. Put him in Quad Cities, and it's probably still bullying. And then get him to Northwest Arkansas by the summer. And then next year, it's like that guy's going to go in the bullpen with Carlos Estevez, Lucas Ursig, and it's going to be nasty.
Yeah. I mean, he went to the fastball about 80% of the time, which made sense. Like, why not? Why not? And it's like he's got a sweeping low A80 slider. Like, the changeup is a pretty good, decent pitch. Like, they both need a little bit of refinement, but man, like, you just get those pitches just to be average. And like, I think the sky's the limit for him.
Yeah, if he's able to tweak the slider and make that, and that's something that the Royals have done a really good job of, is getting guys to throw sliders and make them better. So if he's able to just not make fastball 80% of the time, but a fastball is so good, like I would throw it 80% of the time too. Like, if I had 18 to 19 IVB at 97 from that angle, I would do the same thing.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know if I have someone like I'm necessarily like super low on, but like Chandler Champlain, it was real rough when he got to AAA.
Good.
And the spring was really rough. He was a guy that I thought kind of had that Noah Cameron type trajectory where like it would be a pretty safe profile and he would be in the big leagues this year. I don't see it anymore.
I'm surprised he was in people's top 30 still.
Yeah. I think that's part of it. Is I think at this point he's 25. He'll be 26 this year. Unless something really changes, I'm not as high on it anymore. I don't think he's going to be a part of the big league team. And Carson Roccaforte kind of falls into that same category. Like, it was so rough at times in Quad Cities, and I had him in my top 5, I think, last year.
Yeah, I think after the draft, I was like top 10 with him.
Mm-hmm. I think if I had to go back and find my list, I think I had him 5 preseason. Yeah. And I just can't do it. Like, until I see proof that the bat is going to be consistent. I know the glove is great, and that's awesome, but we already have Kyle Isbell, who's already a average to below average hitter in a really good glove. Like, I want to see more out of my center fielder than just a defense only type guy.
Yeah, I struggle with Roccaforte because like I want to be high on him and like bullish on him, but I think he hit below 200 or just above 200 last year.
Right, it was pretty darn close.
Yeah,
I'll get the exact slash, but it wasn't pretty.
Yeah, it was just a struggle with the bat, and he's just gonna really need to make
it slash 208, 293, 342.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not.
He's 50 plus for a 3-year college guy, and high A is pretty tough. That's not great.
I think that's my other issue. It's not like he's a prep guy where there's some upside, right? Like, he is what he is, kind of, and there's not a lot of room to build.
Yeah. Oh boy. All right. Who is someone that you think has a chance to break out in a big way by mid-season when some of these rankings get reshuffled?
Yeah. The guy I picked,
and if you want to go one hitter, one pitcher to kind of break it up, because it's kind of different the way that they can kind of move.
Yeah. I mean, I'll probably go with an arm here. I'll probably go with Hero Wyatt, just because he made some significant strikes last year. I think he had a 3.47 FIP, 24.5% whiff rate. I just think this kid took those steps in a prep arm that you want to see in his like second year or third. Was it? Yeah, second year, I believe. It's already a 55 grade fastball. Like he saw some velo. Actually gets sustained this year. It's a 60 grade slider. Like he's just showing an ability to miss bats and control the zone, which coming from a 6'1", 190-pound right hander, like you want to see that. Like that's impressive. And I think this is a kid who, if he gets some more development on that changeup, he can really bolster himself as a kind of a starter. So again, command's still an issue. He's got to clean up some of the delivery, but I think that he is a guy who the Royals invested in during that 23 class in a prep arm. And I just think he is kind of he's taken that next step that you want to see in his development.
Yeah. I'm going to stick with the pitcher as well. And I really like Felix Arande. Was at Columbia last year. He was really good for pretty much the entire season. A 2.94 ERA, and he's 21, so he's like at league average level, like age, maybe a little bit older. But he didn't, like a lot of the guys that come, from the Caribbean, he didn't get signed until he was 18 years old out of Cuba. So it wasn't like he was 16. So it's not like he's a little bit of a late bloomer, but not quite. But it's a solid fastball, and that's in the low to mid 90s. He's working on the slider, split change that he's able to get some generate weak contact on. Didn't walk a lot of guys. I think it was only 32 walks in a little over 100 innings, which is good to see from that level where walks are just kind of rampant in the Carolina League. If he goes to Quad Cities and is able to replicate this, it feels like it's a Ben Kudrna type profile where like you're looking at a guy that is going to be a bulldog number 3-4 innings eater starter for you. But a guy that to see a guy with that low of a walk rate, ish of a walk rate in the Carolina League, and really his first go round of affiliated ball stateside was really good to see. And I think the profile's safe enough that he could be a guy that moves up, or at least even though it's not necessarily rankings wise, it's in people's minds like, oh, this guy's going to keep doing pretty well.
Yeah, no, I love that pick because I think he's a guy who has taken similar strides in his development like Wyatt, but he's also taken, like you mentioned, the strides in the command and the control. But how Wyatt hasn't, and he's got the velo increase, he's got the secondary pitch that's already grading about plus with the changeup, and like you add that with the command, like that's impressive.
If I wanted to go hitter, I think I really like Ospo Gonzalez.
I like that pick.
Hit over power center fielder, but and again maybe this is contradictory considering my opinions about Carson Rocafort. But I think if you had to dream on a everyday big leaguer center fielder for the Royals of the future, I think he kind of falls into that category, even though it's a few years down the road. He's a solid fielder. He's a good runner. It's hit over power, but I think the hit tool is going to continue to improve. As he gets older, he's only 19. He's going to be 20 this year. He got a little bit of time in, I think it was in the complex, and they sent him right to Double-A because they just needed a body. But he's going to go to Columbia, and again, for a guy with that type of hit tool, a decent approach, I think he could show out a little bit and show that he could be that type of guy. And if he's able to grow into his body a little bit more, develop a little more power, I think it's a surefire big league center fielder type.
No, I like that pick. The bat I was going to go with is shortstop Yoniker Ugarte, also a guy in the Dominican Summer League. And again, I left him out of my top 15 because, yes, he performed in the Dominican Summer League, but I want to see that happen in the Complex League before I even consider him for that. But he probably had the most upside outside of Ricardo out of that 23 or 24 international class. I think they signed him for $1.3 million during that. But he slashed 299, 423, 395, 9 doubles, 1 triple, home run, 20 RBIs, and 11 stolen bases. So he's sported a 16.4% walk rate, 19.7% K percentage. Again, Dominican Summer League. But if you're looking at a guy with some upside that you want to kind of pay attention to as they make their Arizona Complex League debut, that's a kid I really want to watch.
And I saw Ugarte in the spring breakout game, and when I was watching him, and this is like low tier analysis, but like you just see the guy kind of fill, and even at that age, kind of fills out the uniform. He looks the part, and I was like, oh, okay, this is definitely we got to watch out for, and hopefully he gets to Columbia at some point this year. If not, he'll be in the complex, and we'll have to take a look at it. But two names to watch that are kind of some names to watch are on the lower end of the minor leagues, long ways away, but names to dream on for sure. The other side of that, who's someone maybe you see sliding midseason, based on where they're at right now.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of tough. I could say Walters doesn't make his. Oh, go ahead.
It's kind of the same line of who are you lower on? It's kind of of that same vein, I guess.
I guess like I don't know. This one's tough. I could see somebody like maybe Blake Walters if like things don't get figured out. He could take a little bit of a bump. Like I had him at 6 still because it's just like the upside. But again, upside only gets you so far. Like if you don't actually hit that upside. So like if he's a guy who comes in, who knows? He might stay in the complex league or go to low A again. But like if it's like the same story as last year, like I think he's a guy who could slide down.
Yeah, I could see that. The name that came to mind for me, and I'm not wishing this because I really like the player, and I understand he's a super raw prospect and it was going to be a bit, but Austin Charles.
Yeah.
He basically 2 go-rounds in Columbia, and he improved. Don't get me wrong, he got a lot better his second go-around in Columbia, but he's going to go to Quad Cities. It's a really tough hitting environment early in the year. I feel like if he stumbles out of the gate, people are going to be like, okay, like you bet on the raw athlete. It's not all there, and I could see him falling even further down some of these lists.
Yeah.
Into the 20s or possibly off. I don't think that'll happen, but I could see that. I think if there is a name, it probably is that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that pick. I mean, I could definitely see that with him.
Yeah. All right, last question here, and this now after we talked about a bunch of guys, they're gonna be like Columbia, Quad Cities. Who's a guy that debuts first in 2025? And I don't mean like a Tyler Gentry that has big league time, like a guy that makes his major league debut.
So I picked like the 2 relievers, Eric Sarantola or Evan Sisk, just because like I feel like that's the easy choice. I want to say Cags, like I would love it to be Cags, but I just think like you always need relievers. Someone's gonna get hurt in the bullpen, and like Sarantola and Sisk are both on the 40-man roster. Like one of those guys are probably gonna get a shot. I mean Noah Cameron's on the 40-man too, but they have a lot of starting pitching depth, especially when Marsh comes back healthy. Like you can slot Daniel Lynch in there, you can slot Marsh in there. So I feel like Noah Cameron's got a path that's not as easy as like Sarantola or Sisk would have.
I could see it being Sarantola if they decide to end the Chris Stratton experience. Because I haven't
any opinions on that experience.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, you have Daniel Lynch, you have Angel Serpa, you have Chris Bubich, so you have a bunch of lefty. It's Sam Long as well.
True.
So like the path for Evan Sisk to get in relies on, unfortunately, injury or one of those 3 dudes falling off a cliff. But I don't foresee that really happening for any of them.
Yeah,
Long maybe, but I think he's safe enough. Then they trust him enough that that's not really going to happen. Sarantola or one of the Ray Bolin. Well, Bolin is not a debut type, but you know what I mean. Like a right-handed reliever in Omaha probably has a better chance of making the big leagues sooner rather than later than a lefty.
Yeah, just I agree there.
On the roster.
Yeah, because you're gonna have because I think Bubik or they saw that Lynch is coming out of the bullpen in this spring game, so it's like potentially Bubik getting that final starting rotation spot, and so you're gonna have Lynch and Long and Zerpa. Like you don't need more than 3 lefties,
right? But I do think we see Evan Sisk at some point. They love to shuffle guys, especially guys with options. So I wouldn't be shocked to see it. And I think Evan Sisk could be a good big leaguer. Like
I do too.
It's a funky lefty loogie type. Like that's still is a role that I love as a former very bad left-handed pitcher. Like I love watching these dudes, especially dudes that it just looks different come out of the hand.
Yeah.
If I had to give you an over/under of August 1st for Jac Caglianone pick league debut, what do you say right now?
I got to stick with my gut and say he's coming up before August 1st for sure.
That would be crazy.
Yeah,
that would be crazy.
I think I'm like maybe too bullish, but
it probably is. But at this point, like you dream the world of the guy.
Yeah,
like I think you have to. With the way that the team is talking about him, the way the management's talking about him, how confident he seems coming out of spring,
Yeah.
I mean,
The entire MLB is basically talking about the kid.
yeah. I mean, yeah. It could be real. That'd be crazy. Like I would have to be at that game to see that debut.
100%.
Hitting probably 5 behind Salvador Perez. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. I mean, there hasn't been that much hype around the Royals prospect since Bobby.
Yeah. But and probably like a left-handed guy, so it's probably Hosmer. And it would be, yeah, like I have not gotten definitive that he's going to make a big league debut this season. I'm putting it like 5 to 10%. Yeah. But if he goes and hits like 350 in his first month in Northwest Arkansas, I might bump it to like 25.
Yeah, that's where he's going to get tested the most. It's where the best arms are, prospect-wise.
Yeah. So we'll see. It was a lot of fun. Jared, I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate your insight. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this episode. As I said, we'll be on the lookout for an episode on Monday where I'll do my league-wide predictions. I'm hoping to have a guest on for that as well, for awards, division winners, World Series, all that, and I'll do some Royals predictions specific as well. Leading into opening day, I'm super excited to get this season started. Hope you all join me for it, and I'll talk to you next time.